Hello. Just want to do a quick introduction video before we get into the other assignments. You may notice a bit of a quality upgrade in the video. I've kind of hacked into my iPhone camera here. So if you see, you might see some banners pop down. Hopefully not. I think I have the notifications turned off. But hopefully this works. I think it might look a little better, at least for this particular recording. But also, please forgive my voice right now. I've got a little bit of a cold, so bear with me here as I go through all this stuff. I just want to, the reason I want to do this quick introduction is to say kind of welcome back from spring break. Hopefully everybody had a good spring break. I want you to prepare yourself for the work ahead, and I kind of want to just give you a few ideas of what's coming down the pike here in the next couple weeks. So the two sections after this that you're going to see, I'm going to go over the next essay assignment with you in the next section, and then I'm going to go over the Stasis PowerPoint in the third section. But before I get into that, I just wanted to let you know some of the things about this upcoming assignment, so you can kind of see my face as I tell it to you, because that helps people remember it sometimes a little bit more. But the next paper that you're writing is not the big research paper. Remember, the next essay that's due is actually the proposal essay. So this essay is just a short 2-page paper, and you're basically telling me about the research that you've done and where your research is going to go for the essay that you're going to write, the big essay that you're going to write. You will also let me know of a choice that you're going to make of whether you're going to write a research paper or an argumentative essay. And there's differences there that we're going to talk about. And essentially, the research paper just answers the research question that you had. So you present the evidence and the research that you've done and say, this is the answer to the question that I've discovered. So that's one option. And the other option is an argumentative essay. And the reason for that is because some of you may find that the answer to your question was fairly simple, or it's just not a good enough essay to write, or you don't want to talk about the answer to the question so much as a solution to a problem, among other things. So there's options here for you. The argumentative essay is a way for you to make a case for something controversial within the topic that you chose. And some of you may choose that depending on how much research that you have to work with. So I just want to let you know that you will have one of two options here for the upcoming papers. This proposal essay that will be due in 2 weeks, so March 24th is the due date for that, is just going to highlight the research that you've done and what kind of shape your future essay is taking, to let me know where you're headed, which will be due, I think, 2 or 3 weeks after that. So the next 4 or 5 weeks is really about you writing the paper, and so this next little paper is just sort of an outline of what to expect. So I look forward to reading those. Hopefully everybody, again, had a good spring break. I know I had a crazy time, some ups and downs, but a good, necessary break nonetheless. So I will see you again in the next section of the video. I'm going to talk about the assignment. Thank you again, by the way, for anybody that came out for my online office hours. It was a pretty big hit. I think I had 47 students total log in and watch and ask questions, which is a pretty good number. That's about half of the students that I have this semester. So it was pretty good. We had a couple technological snags here or there. I had to actually end the video halfway through and open up a new link, but it's something that I plan on doing again in the future. Probably not this week, but next week for sure. So I think we'll see how that goes. But seem to go pretty well. If you have any suggestions about that, please let me know. The other thing I will let you know is that my office hours on campus will be back to normal now that the puppies have found their homes. We are done with all of that, other than the puppy that we are keeping and raising together. So some of you saw those puppies on my office hours video last week. So my on-campus office hours should be back to normal, more or less starting this week, but definitely next week. So this week, just to let you know, I will be out of town Thursday and Friday for a conference. So my Thursday office hours, I won't be there. But I will be more available on campus if you would like to reach out to me there now that my life is somewhat back to normal because the puppies are gone and off to their homes. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Please reach out to me through Remind or through here. And if not, I'm going to skip over to the screenshot and go over this assignment with you. So this is the proposal essay assignment sheet. If you have it up on the computer, you can look at it with me, and I'm just going to go over a few aspects of what is expected here. This is a really short paper, and I'm not going to talk about it other than in this video. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. I just need you to basically tell me about your essay. So it's going to be in MLA format like a regular essay would be, hopefully with a beginning, middle, and end, full sentences, and all that jazz. But this is essentially just a short proposal that tells me a little bit about your research. So I'll read some of this to you. This is a 2-page proposal that discusses your research question, your research to date, so any sources and research that you may have come across so far, and what shape your research and or argumentative essay is currently taking. If you remember from the introduction portion of the video for this week, I mentioned that you'll have 2 options here to write either a research paper or an argumentative essay. And so that's what I mean by that. The proposal here should provide your specific research question, so please let me know, again, what that is, if it's changed at all, if it's gotten any more specific or maybe even more broad, depending on how your research went. So provide your specific research question, any necessary background information on the topic as well. So tell me sort of what the voices in the conversation on your topic are telling me, or telling you, sorry. Let me know what are some of the main ideas, some of the focal points of the conversation, and that's what I mean by background information. The background information could include any gaps in the research, so you may have found that there's certain aspects not being discussed at all, and that's important because that's something that you could address in your larger essay that's due later this month. Also, you should let me know whether you're going to write a research paper or an argumentative essay. And I'm going to talk about the differences here between those two, but I have some samples here this week and next week that you can look at. So there's the Is Google Making Us Stupid, which is an article from The Atlantic. Basically, that's a research paper, a research essay. They have a research question, is Google making us stupid? As sort of jovial as that might sound. And then they present a lot of the different sources and information that's out there regarding that question, and they try to come to an answer. And for them, the answer is really at the end of the paper. And then I have some student samples of argumentative essays that are all pulled from Excelsior College. I found some really great materials through there from their online writing lab that will help with this assignment. So those will provide you with the different types of arguments that you could write. For the proposal essay, there's no research requirement. You don't need to cite or quote any of your sources, but you certainly may do so if you find that it's useful. The purpose of the assignment is really just to let me know how your research is taking shape, what you plan to write about in a larger essay, how has the research maybe shaped or formed your opinion on the topic. Have you discovered an answer to this question yet or not? And if so, what do you plan to say about it in the upcoming paper? So let's talk about some of the differences here. Well, before I get into that, I just want to remind you, this assignment portion at the top, that's everything that's needed for the paper. So again, just to reiterate, you need to include what your research question is, what you've been discovering about the topic, so what conversations are being had in general, what have you found to be useful and not useful, and then what you plan to discuss in a larger paper. So I don't need a lot here. It's just those aspects of your research. Really, this is you saying what you found and what you're going to do with it, simply put. So, some key differences here between the research paper and an argumentative essay. Really just the types of reasoning that you're going to use. So if you remember from the logical fallacies PowerPoint that I provided you the other week, there can be fallacies in reasoning, right? And that PowerPoint goes over two types of reasoning. There's deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning, which is what a research paper does, basically takes general observations and draws a specific conclusion. So a research paper would take your sources. These are your general observations. This is the data that you found, the evidence that you found, and you draw a specific conclusion from all that research. So your specific conclusion would be the answer to your research question, right? So starting generally and ending up very specific. An argumentative essay uses inductive reasoning, which is the opposite, where you take something very specific. So you have a thesis statement, maybe, that you're trying to defend, and then you draw some general conclusions from that. So you would be taking a stance on a controversial aspect of your topic in an argumentative essay, and then using the sources to support that position. So rather than say, all these sources lead me to this conclusion, you're saying, here's my conclusion up front, and this is how all the sources support that position. So you have some different samples here. The research essay, I only have one example for you because it's a pretty good example, and there's really only one way to really write a research paper, more or less. Now, for the argumentative essays, you're going to see three types of argumentative essays, and really all that means is the way that you structure the paper, the outline of the paper, as well as what your ultimate goal is. So just a heads up here, your research essay, if you choose to write a research essay, you're just answering your research question. That's it. You're saying, here's all the sources. This is the answer I've come up with based on everything that I've looked at in my research, right? Now, for the argumentative essay, there's three ways that you could do this. There's the Aristotelian or classical argument. This is more or less a direct, this is my position, this is my side, I'm going to persuade you why this is the correct way to look at this information, right? So the classical argument is really you sort of duking it out and saying, this is all the evidence to support my side. The Rogerian argument does sort of the same thing, but tries to find common ground. And so really it's making an argument as well as trying to lift up both sides as sort of a debate to maybe find common ground. A Tolman argument is a little bit more like the Aristotelian argument, and really is just can be used to analyze arguments more or less. So you may not really find that this one's as easy to write as some of the other ones. But it's essentially the same as the classical argument. It's just arranged a little differently. I believe that the Tolman model looks at the opposing views first and then chooses your side, whereas the classical model looks at your position first and then the opposing view. So again, it's really all about structure and organization. There's not much difference between the three necessarily. It's just the way that you sort of organize the content. And so you can actually find more about that in the Excelsior Online Writing Lab presentation that I have linked on Moodle. That will kind of give you all the information you need to know about writing those types of essays, which I believe is under next week's materials. So let's kind of leave it at that. But the paper formatting here, as I said at the beginning, it's MLA. So it should be typed, double-spaced, full sentences. It should be an essay. You may use first person. You should really in this one because it's your research that you're talking about. And basically just kind of tell me a story. What led you to choose this topic? Why did it interest you? What question did you want to answer? What research did you find in the quest for that answer? And then did you answer it? Do you have an answer for that question? That's essentially all I'm looking for here. So there's no real structure to the essay, so much as really just telling me a story. So beginning, middle, and end. If you have questions, though, please let me know. This shouldn't take you too long. It will be due March 24th by midnight, or before midnight, I should say, and is 2 pages in length. Also, I had some students get a little confused about this. I just want to reiterate. The due date does not mean the date that you need to do the paper. The due date is the last possible day that you can submit the paper. So please remember that you can submit assignments anytime before and leading up to that due date and time. You don't need to carve out your Sundays to get this stuff done. You can complete these assignments anytime before that. You just can't really submit them afterwards without penalties. So please remind yourself of that. So it's the due date, meaning when the deadline is, not the due date when you're supposed to do it. So hopefully that cleared a few things up. All right, so this is the end of this section, and I'm going to jump over to the Stasis PowerPoint next. Okay, so this is stasis theory, and I'm not going to go over this in too much detail because all this PowerPoint really is just a presentation of slides that offers different areas that your research paper or argumentative essay could take place in, right? There's just a bunch of questions on this PowerPoint that you can kind of work your way through and ask yourself, is the research that I'm doing, does it answer any of these questions? Are any of these questions sort of being left unanswered, and do I have an answer for them? Is there something that I can address? And so this is probably going to be more beneficial if you're writing an argumentative essay, but it's also useful for your research paper as well because it can kind of help you. It can help you organize your information and focus your ideas and your sources onto something specific within the topic that you're writing about. So, what is stasis theory? Stasis just comes from the Greek, as most of our rhetorical terms do. It just means a standing still. It's referring to any areas of conversation that are at a standstill or an impasse, where sides of the issue disagree and the argument just doesn't move past that disagreement. If you look at something like abortion, for instance, we cannot get past this, is it okay or not okay to get an abortion, right? That we have not moved the marker on this discussion in 50 years. There's been no, honestly, new arguments or development that is moving this conversation forward. We're just at a standstill on this. People are either for it or against it, or they don't have an opinion, right? And so we're at an impasse. There's nothing definitively that decides whether or not we should be doing this, or if it's moral, or if it's right or wrong, or whatever. So, what are we using stasis theory for? This is really an invention process, meaning it kind of helps you create ideas or helps you figure out ways to write your essay. Finds focus and topics for your essay. It also helps encourage knowledge building in your content area, so that you can kind of address things that are topics that are not being addressed within the topic that you chose. There's a number of advantages to using stasis theory. Mainly, though, this can help clarify sort of your positioning or thinking on a particular issue. So if you're writing the argumentative essay, for instance, you can really lay out your sources and your worldview on a particular aspect of your topic and say, this is what I think about the issue, and this is what we should do about it. So, like I said, I'm going to move through this somewhat quickly. So please don't be alarmed. You may have to watch this a couple times, but really, this is mostly for you to just go through and ask yourself these questions about the research that you've done if you're looking for things to write about for the larger essay. So stasis theory looks at 4 aspects of a conversation or a debate or an argument. It looks at the facts. Do we agree on the facts of the matter? It looks at the definitions. Do we agree or disagree on the meanings of words and terms and ideas and situations? It looks at the quality of an issue, the seriousness of things that occurred. And it looks at plans of action, things that we can do to help us move forward or change or create solutions to issues that we may be having. So you can kind of work your way down through this. You might find, for instance, that, hey, we agree, my topic in the conversation that's being had agrees on the facts, right? Maybe they agree on the definitions too, right? We agree on all the definitions. What we don't agree on is how serious the issue is, right? So if you look at something like the Me Too movement and Harvey Weinstein, right? We agree on the facts that Harvey Weinstein is a bad person that used his position of power to do bad things and to coerce women into doing unspeakable things, right? So we agree on the facts. Definitions. We agree on the definitions of rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment. Some of those areas can be gray depending on who's having that conversation, but for the most part, we agree on those definitions. Now we can look at the seriousness of the issue. Okay, so we agree that these things happen. We agree on the definitions of those things. How serious is it? Well, in the case of Harvey Weinstein, pretty serious. In the case of Louis C.K., pretty serious. As serious as Harvey Weinstein? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how you look at those issues. If you look at the case of Terry Crews, right? Terry Crews went up in front of Congress and talked about how he was sexually assaulted on set, right? And Terry Crews is a really big dude, right? He doesn't look like the type of person that would be or could be sexually assaulted. And he gets up in front of Congress because he says, look, this does happen to men too. It happens to a lot of people. There is really no discriminatory thing standing in the way of sexual assault. And he stood up there and said his piece about it. Now, is what happened to Terry Crews as serious as what happened to Harvey Weinstein? Well, you may find that there's a standstill there, right? Some people would say, yes, it is because it's sexual assault and we have to take them all seriously. Other people, like let's say Matt Damon, might say it's not as serious as the Harvey Weinstein thing, right? Matt Damon kind of got some flack because he went on camera and said that there is a difference between pinching a butt and raping someone, right? Okay, there is. Is it still sexual assault? Yes. So maybe there's a standstill on that. Maybe we agree that grabbing somebody is sexual assault. Okay, raping someone, sexual assault. Maybe we don't agree on how serious those things are. Maybe what happened to Terry Crews isn't as serious as what happened to Rose McGowan and with Harvey Weinstein, right? Maybe it is. But maybe that's where the standstill is. So that's something that an argumentative essay would address. How serious is this issue? Is it as serious as these other things? And then the fourth one, plan of action. Maybe we agree on all these things. We agree about the facts. We agree about the definitions. We agree about the seriousness, right? So maybe we agree on the facts of Me Too. We agree on the definitions of sexual assault, okay? Maybe we agree, let's just say we agree that Terry Crews, the thing that happened with Terry Crews is as serious as what happened with Rose McGowan and Harvey Weinstein, right? Say that it's just as serious. Maybe now we're at a standstill on what do we do about this, right? Obviously, sexual assault is a really big problem. I don't know how else to say that other than that it's a really big problem. R. Kelly just had an interview about new sexual assault allegations, right? It's the Catholic Church has new sexual assault allegations every day, seemingly. So maybe we agree on all these things, but we don't agree on what is the next step. How do we deal with this? What is our plan of action, right? And so that's something that you could write an argumentative essay about. chances are you will not get through all four of these things without finding a standstill, right? There's almost no way that you could get through all four of these areas and not find something that is at an impasse. Because if it was, we wouldn't be talking about it, right? We wouldn't be having the conversation, probably. So I'm just going to work through these four things really quickly and just go over some of the questions that you could ask yourself as you move through. So if you're looking through your research and you find that your researchers just don't agree on the facts, right? That's something that you could focus on in your paper. Maybe they disagree on whether something happened or not, right? I have a student writing about bullying, for instance, and there's a disagreement as to whether a student was bullied or not. This is a disagreement of the facts. Was the student bullied? Did the event happen? Did something happen? Was the student bullied? And that could be the focus of the paper, making an argument for whether or not the student was bullied. Period. Maybe they move on and say, how did it begin? What are its causes? How did the bullying incident begin? Maybe it's not a question of did it happen, but how did it start? Why did the bullying occur? Was the student coerced into bullying the student? Was he egged on? Was the student maybe from a bad home? Was he just having a bad day? Does this just normal behavior for the bully? These could be things that could be addressed, right? Maybe your research, there's disagreements on if it could be changed or not, right? Going back to the abortion topic, for instance, there is a disagreement as to whether or not we can reverse the Roe v. Wade decision, right? Roe v. Wade set precedents for abortions in this country because it deemed that the government cannot have control over a woman's privacy. And a woman's womb is considered part of her privacy. So that's a point of impasse. Can this be changed? Can we overturn Roe v. Wade? That might be something that could be discussed. So you may find that all of these questions are at an impasse, right? That's fine. That doesn't mean you have to address all of these questions. Just pick one. What's more interesting? What do you have more sources for? This is not me saying you have to address all these questions. You can address none of them, right? And focus on something else. That's perfectly fine. It's up to you. So let's say you work your way through the facts here and you find that your research agrees on all these things. Okay, so let's just move to the next one then. They agree on the facts. They agree that the thing happened, that there's a problem there. They know how it began, right? They know that bullying occurred. They know what caused it, all this stuff. Okay, so let's move past the facts. Maybe we don't agree on what bullying is, or what exactly the type of bullying that occurred was. Is it a serious issue of bullying or not, right? So we move past the facts and say, all right, what's the nature of the bullying? What type of bullying was it? Was it a physical altercation? Was it verbal abuse? Was it emotional abuse? Psychological abuse? So on and so forth, right? That could be the topic of discussion. Maybe it's not an argumentative essay about whether or not the bullying occurred. It's an argument about what type of bullying it was. This wasn't physical bullying. It was emotional bullying, right? Completely different things. You can ask yourself, what kind of problem is it? Maybe it's emotional bullying, but what type of emotional abuse, right? Is it maybe gaslighting, or is it some form of cyberbullying? Is it brainwashing? How is the bullying that's occurring altering the emotions of the person? How are they bullying the person with emotions, right? So some things to consider. Moving on to quality here, you can ask things like, does my research agree on whether or not the issue is a good or a bad thing? In the case of bullying, we pretty much all agree bullying is bad, right? Bullying is not good. It's really dangerous. It can lead to suicide and self-harm. It can lead to more bullying or other aggressive behaviors. So we pretty much agree that bullying is bad, right? That's not something that my student would be able to write about. They wouldn't be able to write an argument saying that bullying is a good thing. I wouldn't let them write a paper that says bullying is a bad thing either, because we just know that it is, right? Duh. It would be like trying to argue that the sky is green. It's not green. It's not technically blue either. It's really nothing. It's just the way that light refracts off the air molecules in the atmosphere. So we agree that bullying is bad, right? But maybe we disagree on how serious the bullying is. This is going back to the Me Too thing, right? Maybe we disagree on how serious is Terry Crews's incident with sexual assault, where someone grabbed him. I won't say where or how, but someone grabbed him inappropriately, and it was an unwelcomed grab, and it was alarming to him, right? Maybe we disagree on how serious that is. Maybe someone looks at Terry Crews, who, is huge and physically intimidating, right? And just doesn't seem like the kind of person that would allow himself to be abused in that way, right? Maybe someone looks at him and goes, he can't be assaulted. Look at Terry Crews, right? And somebody else looks at him and says, no, anybody can be assaulted. It doesn't matter how big you are, right? Assault is really about whether or not something is welcomed or unwelcomed. If someone grabs you and it's not welcomed, then that is serious, right? So there is maybe a disagreement on how serious it is. Now, Terry Crews's incident maybe not as serious as Rose McGowan's incident, but serious nonetheless. So that could be something that you address. You could look at something like, whom does this affect? What stakeholders or people involved could be affected? In the case of bullying, for instance, the student that was being bullied, that my student is looking at, the student that was being bullied could be really affected by this. How is that student going to be affected with the way we treat this incident of bullying, right? If we just shrug it off and say he wasn't bullied, it's fine. But he thinks that he was bullied, or he knows that he was bullied. How will that affect him down the line, right? That's something that you could address. How this will affect person, how could it affect others that are being bullied? If we're not addressing this student's incident of bullying, how will we address other cases of bullying, right? That might affect future instances where students are bullied, and because we didn't do anything about it before, we won't do anything about it then, right? Which leads me to my next question. What happens if we don't do anything, right? You can write an argument about why we need to take action, because if we don't take action, calamity could happen, right? Look at climate change, right? There's arguments being made that if we do nothing about climate change immediately in the present, we will see unalterable changes, incurable changes in our climate that will have serious, devastating effects on our ability to grow crops, our ability to live near water, our ability to drink clean water, right? So your paper could become, answering the what happens if we do nothing about climate change, right? What happens if we do nothing about bullying in this case? So some things to think about. And lastly, maybe you find that none of those are interesting to you. Maybe you want to look at what solutions could be had. In the case of climate change, for instance, rather than say, what happens if we do nothing, maybe you want to look at, maybe that's not interesting to you, and you want to look at what should we do, right? Should we enact more alternative energy initiatives? Should we do a carbon tax on emissions, right? Should we penalize companies who are not trying to go green, right? Should we go the opposite route and provide incentives for companies that go green, right? Rather than punishing those companies, maybe we offer incentives for them to take action against climate change, right? Positive reinforcement. So that's something to consider here. What should be done about the problem in the case of bullying? Should someone be fired? Should some student be suspended or placed in detention? Or should the school itself have new policies made about how they handle bullying, right? So really it's up to you. You may get to the end of these slides and say, none of these interest me, right? And that's fine. The questions here are really for you to consider what focus your research/argumentative essay should have, right? What is the main focus of that paper? If you were just trying to address your research question, then you don't have to look at any of these stasis questions, right? Maybe you're just trying to answer what your research question was from the get-go, right? Or on the other hand, maybe you know the answer to that question, and it's not going to get you a good paper, or it's not interesting enough to write about, right? So maybe instead of writing about the answer to the question, you write about one of these issues in terms of stasis. Do we need to discuss the facts further? Do we need to discuss definitions further? Do we need to discuss the quality further? Do we need to discuss policies further? So it's really up to you. Like I said, this isn't something that you're required to use. It's just something that can be useful and helpful. I'm not going to go over the rest of these slides, but real quick, I will say that you can also ask yourself things like the journalistic questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who caused the incident? What incident occurred? Where did it occur? When did it occur? Why did it occur? How did it occur? You could answer all those questions, or maybe just focus on one of them, right? That's up to you. There's just other ways that you can sort of approach stasis theory. And then there's just a couple graphics here that you can look at. I'm not going to go over, but you can look at them yourself. It's just ways to kind of think about stasis theory a little bit further. So, thanks for listening. Let me know if you have any questions about this. Again, this is not something that you must use. It's just something that you can use to help you think about your research paper or argumentative essay.